And Emmanuel, I do think we should point out Israel's rationale for initially taking a neutral stand on sanctions was that it wanted to keep open its dialogue with Russia, serve perhaps as a mediator, and also concerned over the big Russian Jewish community and its ability to both travel and to carry on its lives. But apparently the heat from Washington was just too much to keep that stance.
It was, but I think also for Israel, it was not sustainable, both practically and morally, to sit on the fence. I mean, how long can you push off joining the sanctions when those war crimes are being committed by Putin in the Ukraine? He's bombing civilians day and night. So how long can Israel sit on the fence just because we need to coordinate our moves with Putin over Syria? I think that, yes, Israel has an interest in acting freely in Syria, but it does not justify, as I said, sitting on the fence. And as your report said, when the rest of the free world is building a coalition to stop this aggression and those war crimes, Israel has a moral duty to join those sanctions.
Right, and I just point out some possibly related news breaking just in the past hour. It was reported that Prime Minister Naftali Bennett spoke again today with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, earlier today, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine's Chief of Staff, Andrei Yermak, tweeted this, quote, Israel undertook the difficult but noble mission of mediating the search for peace and ending Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We also have an intensive dialogue with it on its participation in humanitarian issues. Apparently, humanitarian issues were discussed between Prime Minister Bennett and President Putin today. But you raised the issue of, for example, Israel's position with Russia vis-a-vis Syria. And I mentioned the Russian Jewish community. Maybe he also wanted to make clear to Putin why Israel is taking its latest steps.
Yes, but on the other hand, I think that Israel should not rely too much on Putin. We know the person, we know the man. We know also that historically, he's the one who provided nuclear technology, civilian technology to Iran. He's the one who helped Iran bypass U.S. sanctions together with China. So I don't think it's a right strategy for Israel to rely too much on Putin, even though, as I said, we need this open line of communication over Syria. But at the end of the day, I think that Israel has to take a stance. By the way, it was the case. There is a precedent in 1950 during the Korean War. At the time, David Ben-Gurion, our prime minister, took a very strong stance against North Korea and the Soviet Union. It did cost us diplomatically vis-a-vis the Soviets, but Ben-Gurion understood at the time that we had to take a stance, and he took this decision.
Well, it looks like the Israeli government coming to that decision. We should note, though, Ukraine, at least one senior member of the government, grateful to Israel for its role in mediation. Prime Minister Bennett still involved deeply in that position. But the question is there much to mediate here? We heard the fourth round of talks today, direct talks between Ukraine and Russia, and still no apparent progress.
Because Russia has no interest in negotiations. I mean, just a few days ago, Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, claimed that Russia never attacked the Ukraine. How can you rely on such people? When the Russians lie so much, and then we know that Putin, his only interest is to destroy the Ukraine, is to replace Zelensky with a puppet regime. He's only using those fake negotiations to keep bombarding civilians and try to advance his aim. So I think it's a very dangerous game for Israel to get involved in, because I don't think Putin is negotiating in good faith. And he's just playing for time, and Israel also has its reputation that is at stake. So I would strongly recommend to be extremely careful about Putin and his intentions, when we know that at the end of the day, as I said, what he wants is to replace Zelensky with a puppet regime similar to the one he has in Belarus.
The question is whether he can achieve that realistically. I just want to ask you a phrase we've heard more and more these days, exit ramp. There needs to be some kind of exit ramp for Vladimir Putin to sort of step down from his current position, or is that just wishful thinking still?
I don't think it's wishful thinking, because the West can and is bringing Russia to its knees economically. You said previously that Russia is about to default its debt.
Right.
The West has the ability, together with other countries such as Japan, to put Russia on its knees economically. Once the Russian economy starts collapsing, and once the Russian army starts really facing a tough guerrilla, and we're almost 3 weeks into that war, into the Ukraine, then Putin will have to reassess his decision, his miscalculation to invade the country. until Russia doesn't feel the pain, both economically and militarily, I don't see any room and purpose for negotiations.
All right. They are starting to feel the pain. The question is how much pain they and the Russian people can endure.
Well, they don't really have a say, as we know.
They don't. But the question is whether anybody in Russia besides Vladimir Putin has a say. We'll find out, I guess, in the coming days. Professor Emmanuel Navon, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And so